Welcome to SEB Innovation. Today, our guests are Österman and Sofia Öquist from SEB and SEB Innovation Labs, where Adam is the Acting Director of the Innovation Lab and Sofia Öquist is Innovation Lead. And welcome the both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And nice to be here.
And maybe we should tell the audience what SEB is. I mean, it's a bank, obviously, but it's quite a large bank, at least by Nordic standards, from where we are. But tell us a little bit about the general size, and you also are, of course, present in many countries, I imagine.
Yeah, so our bank is one of the leading Northern European business banks, mainly, but also for private individuals, of course, and one of the biggest in Scandinavia.
And how long have you guys been at the bank?
I've been at the bank for 11 years now. So I started off in 2009 and been working my way around the bank and to my current position. So that's one of the benefits of being in a big corporation, where you can really develop yourself and discover new sort of skills.
And Sofia?
I started in the bank a couple of years ago as a trainee and have since then also worked throughout different positions. And I think it's been about 4 or 5 years now. So in SEB terms, that's still being a newbie, I can tell. But I think when you come up to about 10 years as Adam, you are kind of not new to the bank anymore. And I think that also shows that the bank and the bank and the different rules have changed very much. So, and it's currently also changing. So.
And I for one, my last job was probably the longest sort of like I've stayed at an employee, and that was like 6 years. Before that, I think my average time was like 3 years. 3 years maximum, probably, even at most places. So
yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And I think if you look upon the many people that have been in SEB for a very long time, they usually don't stay in the same position, maybe more than 3 years. So, and they change across the organization, across departments. So that's very fun.
Yeah, and of course, in large entities like that, also sort of like it's there is a lot of other roles and opportunities. So it is almost like switching jobs, of course, but even if not switching company. But what I wanted to say was really also that I view it as a very good. It's a good sign, or at least a sign of that the company itself is fun to work at if you have been with an organization for such a long time. That means that you have gotten enough of growth opportunities, I guess, if you stay for that long.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the last, I would say from 2015, when the bank really implemented a new strategy and looked at digitalization in a new way, that also became the starting point for a new way of working and really putting effort and an emphasis on the employee and upskilling and reskilling the staff so that we can develop into new positions and keep the bank relevant.
And Sofia, you started as a trainee. What kind of background do you have? Did you come straight from school, or had you already been working in the banking sector or financial sector before?
I came more or less straight from school. Such did more or less all the trainees. So we were graduates. Also, to become future leaders within the bank. Often you try to recruit a type of profile. But we were spread all across the different parts of the bank, but we worked throughout a year as a group. So that included, we did rotations and we did internships. We did a lot of educations to get really all the tools that you needed to succeed very fast in your career within SEB. So I think that was a great experience for me to really get that kickstart, trying to understand how it all the pieces, you can put them together in different ways, understanding how our data scientist works, how our financial strategy department works, and how that connects. That really gave me a great understanding to start my career. So I think I learned a lot, but I also was really eager to apply my knowledge from school, but also my internships that I had throughout school into practice.
And what about you, Adam? When you started out, did you also come from school directly? Because I feel the both of you look so young. You look like kids.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Let's stop at there and move on. No, but I didn't come straight from school actually, and my way into banking is quite of a irony and paradox, because when I started in 2009, that was during the financial crisis. So starting a position within a bank at that point is quite irrational. What I did was actually coming from being having my own company as a professional photographer. But when the market crashed, most of the marketing budgets from my clients were scrapped to save the companies. And then I needed money, of course, to pay my rent. And that's when I found a position within SEB, basically doing loan applications handling. So accepting and throwing some of them away. That was my way into the bank. And it was a combination between having this really creative job as a photographer and then stepping into a bank with very, very clear frames and regulations. And I enjoyed the mix between them quite a lot.
Yeah, but because it sounds, I mean, of course, every working role is kind of like important, but it sounds like you started out pretty low on the ladder, but also going from photography to at least what I would consider, if you're looking at loan applications, sort of like it's quite a menial task. It's not like you have to apply 100% of your creativity to succeed.
Yeah, that's true. But also it's very clear when something is a yes and when something is a no. When I do photography, I am a very like pixel perfect guy. And I'm the only one setting the standard for my own job. And it becomes very stressful when specifically when you work alone and you don't do benchmark or get any feedback from any colleagues. The only way to receive feedback is to actually send your work to the client and hope that they like it, because the work is finished.
That's the ultimate feedback. Although I guess there's a discrepancy between what a customer like and sort of like what you consider to be a really, really great piece of work.
Yeah, you have to remind yourself that probably they hired you because they like the work that you do, your personal style. But it's always the balance of trying to match your own expectations and thinking about what the client wants or what they would possibly like out of this specific job. So the combination there will be getting like, if this and that is not fulfilled, then it's a no. If it is, it's a yes, and then you move on. So very fulfilling, and of course a very big safety when it comes to your income, getting paid on the 25th every month, rather than having some excellent months and some months that are very low on money, even though you work super hard at doing both.
Yeah, that's the life of the solo entrepreneur. But okay, so Adam, you came into the bank with a previous background as a professional photographer, setting quite high standards for yourself. And you, Sofia, you have also done stuff where high standards were actually necessary to succeed. And I'm thinking about your skiing career.
Yes, so that's true. So before I should say, what really shaped me and the person that I've become today is a major part due to my skiing career. So I've been competing in alpine skiing.
Tell us about it, what it was.
Oh yeah, a long story short maybe, but I've been competing in alpine skiing since I basically could walk, part of a skiing family. And for me, competing and traveling throughout the world was a great experience, growing as a person and as an individual. And at a pretty young age, also having these high requirements on yourself, mostly, and also from others, of course, but mainly from yourself, and delivering each day, going into practice, even though you don't really want to really achieve those great results. So I think it's been a lot of fun, definitely, and I've learned so much from it. But you start in a really young age, so you need to consider that as well, and also have the time to be young as well, I should say.
So you would say that it really took a lot of your time. So maybe your childhood was not as childhoodish as other kids.
Not really, and I spent a lot of my hours after school practicing and also doing more workout. But I did it with some friends as well that did skiing. But one fun story is that when I started high school, I thought it was so much fun because I now had the time to go in school, and all my classmates, they were so tired of it. They had been through school so many each day, all the hours needed, but I came there and I basically didn't been to school that much. And I thought this was awesome. All my friends at the same place, we can just hang out during the breaks. So I had this new boost of energy, and I mean, I've always school is fun. I always like to learn new things. So, but this was also a new start for me.
That's awesome. So when everyone else is longing for a skiing vacation, leaving school, you were actually hoping to end your skiing vacation and go back to school. That's right.
More or less, yes.
All right. And you both ended up then at what is called the Innovation Lab. And can you tell me and the audience what the SEB Innovation Lab is?
Well, the Innovation Lab was started in 2015, as I said, at the same time when the bank set a new strategy. So this is one of the initiatives to accelerate innovation, accelerate digitalization, accelerate new ways of working, and really emphasizing on an innovative culture in SEB. So a brief history is that we started out within the field of employee innovation, hosting innovation days where employees could pitch their ideas to a jury of senior manager in the bank, giving them the thumbs up or thumbs down to enter the Innovation Lab program, a 12-week program using lean startup methodology, basically, to take it from an idea into a working prototype ready to be handed over to the bank to keep developing. So that was the initial thought, and of course, an innovation lab should innovate itself as well. So we have continued to working, adding on different methodologies and different customer group, basically. So we do hackathons, separate design sprints, and now we're also working with open innovation and what we call co-innovation with our large corporate clients.
And when you first started out, and maybe still the overall your overall purpose is to I guess increase the innovation capacity at your organization, but also utilize or realizing the potential within the company, especially when it comes to employees with good ideas. And now also it sounds like you're extending this also to clients within the company sphere, so to speak.
Yeah, and not only the potential, but also the culture within the bank. Yeah.
So I think you rephrased it pretty correct there, Peter, saying that we have these two legs. So our aim is really to explore new opportunities for the bank and strengthen the innovation capabilities in general. So we need to both enhance the culture that we need as a company to thrive in innovation, creating the space for our colleagues to be to engage in explorations, to engage in thinking outside the box, because they usually have the skills, the knowledge about the customers, the customer pains. So we need to engage them in our way of thinking and guide them through the processes that will help them to maybe scope down an idea or a concept or such, while we also map this towards the trends, the strategic directions that the bank want to position themselves in the future. So it's these two legs, maybe we should say, that we stand on and work with daily.
And I guess if you're running an innovation lab, and also I guess for the sake of the audience, I mean, the innovation lab, it's not huge. It's basically consists of the two of you, and or maybe you have more colleagues.
Correct. We are the core of Innovation Lab, and that has been one of the strategic decisions when starting up. We need to be small, agile, because every single one of the 15,000 employees that SEB has is could be part of the Innovation Lab. And there's actually a board decision saying that every employee of SEB can spend 20% of their working time in the lab, in a lab project. So basically 1 day a week for a short period of time could be spent in Innovation Lab.
All right. So not through your whole career, but for specific projects, then you can do that. But that's great. It's sort of like a take and an adaptation from Google's previous strategy, at least. So it's good that is actually a commitment from the highest top. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't happen at all, right?
Yeah, but then we do have like side competences, if we would like to name them like that. We work very close with one part of the bank called Emerging Technology, where we have two colleagues looking into exactly that, new technologies that might or might not be a thing to look into for the bank on the long term, and also to persons working as CX prototypers, basically. Which have
CX meaning customer experience, right?
Exactly. So they help us doing design and front and back end programming, basically, so we can take something to a high or low fidelity prototype, basically.
And I guess that and I was really interested in asking when your first, let's say, the Innovation Lab pilot or its first formation, we had these 12 weeks where an employee or participant would build a prototype. How far could they usually get within 12 weeks?
Quite far, I would say. They would have a working prototype that has been tested with the clients, the end customer, and iterated at least one time based on that feedback, with a solid business case. Otherwise, it hasn't wouldn't have gone through the whole program. And a solid handover package to the right unit or organization within SEB. And we're very proud of having what we call implementation rate, basically how many of the ideas that started the lab actually becomes a real product or service for our customers or employees. And that is around 28%. So quite good numbers.
I think that sounds just incredible, actually. And I mean, maybe I have low standards, but just the fact that you actually already at that stage sort of like had this handover process, that this needs to have a business owner, more or less, that want to have this as a service, provide this as a service. But also that the success rate was so high. Of course, you have like a pretty qualifying stage, right, with this jury, and so the bar already there it's pretty high. But still, I'm super impressed, because I think many companies would, or I mean, in that context, 1 in 10 would still be an excellent result, not 3 in 10. So that's really awesome. But I guess the really tricky thing in organizations such as yours would be that you have a super stable, super traditional core business, and I guess the awareness now is much higher than only maybe 5 or 10 years ago, with the necessity of innovating. But still, there's a mindset there with sort of like you have this huge core business, and then you come with a new service that sort of like adds not even 1% to the bottom line. And how do you make that happen? And I just want to take a short experience from myself. When I was working for a large media house, I was looking into mobile advertising, and of course it was going to be a booming market. It was like almost 10 years ago, and the executives, they basically, it's such a small market, it's not even 1%, or maybe it was like 2% of their overall turnover, but it was sort of like, no, that's not interesting for us. Then only 2-3 years ago, after, was maybe 5% and so forth. So you always have to start somewhere. But please, how do you resolve that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And also going back to the what we just talked about regarding the innovation program, what also shows is that all the ideas that didn't really qualify were still very good ideas. So looking back today in our archive, these are the ideas that many fintechs has used, or similar to them at least, and succeed very much with. So I think what you addressed there, the capacity to take on this new ideas and create the space and manage the resources to develop and explore a bit further. It's really tricky to balance, and knowing that we bet on the right things. So we are fully aware of that. And what we also struggle with as a bank today, of course, is the number of things that we need to do to just be compliant, which more or less take the resources that we need to also look ahead and explore new opportunities. But we had a discussion yesterday, I think, or one day before, that we need to commit necessary resources to raise the gaze as well, to look ahead, because otherwise we'll also always run the backlog of what we should have done yesterday. So really committing these resources and having them decided or dedicated to a number of explorations that should be outside core business, and communicating that throughout the organization as the statement is important.
Okay, so I'm going to rephrase that now into advice, and that is kind of like, if you're a large organization, commit resources to future explorations or commit suicide. Or if not, that is basically committing suicide. So that's an important point. And also you phrase it like explorations. Can you explain why?
Yeah, maybe that's part of a culture, but I think for us, being brave enough to say, okay, we need to spend some time here to explore one part of a trend, one part of new technology, trying to find out what potential impact could this have, benefit or challenges for future financial services. And having that really phrasing as an exploration in our case, sense and try to get a better understanding of all these ideas, because there is not we don't suffer from few ideas, rather the opposite, that we need to explore them a bit more to get more knowledgeable and a bit more in depth. What are the consequences, effects, opportunities that we could see from out this idea? So we spend some time with colleagues across the bank, with partners, with customers, trying to get that better understanding. So that's what we call or phrase as an exploration, for example.
And I think also, I mean, one of the main takeaways that I got, at least when I read the Lean Startup, also, I mean, how old is it now? Like 12 years, something like that, maybe, probably more. It's and I really wish that book had come out earlier, but I mean, it's not rocket science. It's very, very pragmatic advice. But one thing that really struck a chord with me was that since I had my own companies and also raised venture capital in my earlier life, I was fascinated by the insight that, because usually when you get financing, you set up milestones, and those milestones are pretty hard, sort of like, yeah, well, the product should have these features here, and then we should launch, and we should get to our first 10,000 users or whatever. But usually those, especially the time frames there, they usually never hold up. And so if you have a plan and if you have financing for those milestones, failure is almost a guarantee, and it will always end up in pretty heated discussions, and you need more money, etc., etc. But in the Lean Startup, you instead introduced learning milestones. So like, what can we learn with this amount of time, on this amount of time, and with this amount of money? And if you shake hands on that, you will have a more fruitful approach, I think, especially since all new ventures are basically, it is a journey, and where nothing is certain, for sure.
Fully agree.
Yeah, and that's probably also very tightly connected to fail fast and learn. Failure is learning. And I think that's still something. It's almost a cliche now, but it's super relevant, because every exploration that we do, even though, I mean, the numbers you said of 1 out of 10 is still a good number. If we say that 1 out of 100 explorations goes through to the next stage, we have still learned a lot from that exploration. And one of the absolute main KPIs in that stage is to share that knowledge within the organization, so we become smarter together. So it's about transparency and making sure that everyone can tag along for the knowledge ride, at least.
Oh, the knowledge ride! I like that. and how do you do that? Because I love that you actually have that as a KPI. And speaking of KPIs, I was also going to ask you about KPIs, because I heard, and I think this was from somewhere within Volvo, they actually had a KPI on failures. They needed to have a certain amount of failures. A too high a success rate probably shows that you're not really stretching or flexing your muscles enough. But KPIs for knowledge sharing, can you tell us what that is, or how you measure it?
I mean, we believe in transparency, and that innovation, I think we should clarify some terms first. There's like innovation people and innovative people, and those are innovative people aren't necessarily me and Sofia working in Innovation Lab. We're the innovation people, and our job is to help everyone else that really is innovative succeed, no matter where you work, if you're a client of ours, or if you're an employee. So we don't want to take away the fun, innovative work from anyone. But that being said, everyone can't be part of every single exploration that we do, even though they might have wanted to. So one of the big things for us is transparency, then to share the knowledge that comes up with different people within Innovation Lab and the explorations we do. And we're currently working on basically our own innovation portal, where we, in very brief terms, describe our projects, the team that has been involved, the outcome of the exploration, so we can share it digitally within the organization. And in parallel, we're working on a concept that we call the Innovation Park, which is also a physical place, and that's Sofia's brainchild. So I think you are the best one to describe it.
Yes, please. The Innovation Park.
Yeah. So the name comes from us, me and Adam, together with Emerging Technologies, sitting in the area in Arenastaden, which we call the park. So that's the working name. But we basically describe this as a both physical and digital place for employees across the bank to find the right tools, find the right network, and also find the right knowledge very easy to strengthen the innovation capabilities throughout the bank. So what we provide here is, together, for example, with our prototypers, we have a lot of different tools that necessarily don't apply or is available to all colleagues across the bank. It could be cameras, microphones, other computers, which you can build things maybe outside SEB's firewalls on. And also we have specialist knowledge, because often you have an idea, but the threshold for an employee in the bank exploring or validating this idea, is this relevant? Could the bank do this? Having that first validation with some experts, maybe security experts, it could be compliance. So we have that network or that knowledge connected to us, and we will provide and help you, support you in that first dialogue to lower that first threshold. And then we have the network, which is some different constellations of groups with specialists across the bank, ranging from strategies to really deep tech people, to also sometimes cross-pollinate on these ideas, to once again make us a bit more knowledgeable what it is, what it means, to then decide upon, is this relevant and should we explore it further? So really that also like almost a community, but we also called it impetus while we were working with it.
Sorry, you call it in?
Impetus, which is a Latin word just describing a force.
Okay, yeah, okay. Impetus,
that enables more activity. So that's something that we work with, but all this, that platform that Autumn mentioned, is one part of that work to both distribute our work when we talk about it in various dialogues, but also having it all transparent digitally to our colleagues.
And this is one of the perks of being in a large corporate, because we have all the expertise basically we need within a phone call away or an email away. We used to have this quite, I wouldn't say good slogan, but it was a slogan. Sting like a startup, float like a corporate. So a bit cliche maybe, but that's basically how we can operate. Because if we don't need legal people or business people or people that's expert in scaling businesses or reading complicated legal agreements with American partners that we might use. it's only one phone call away, and it's not. We don't pay for their time or money. The bank does, but it's still within our reach. So it's a very unfair advantage if we talk about that term as well.
Of course it makes sense, and I think it's wonderful that you have that in place, basically, that not only having that all those experts and access to knowledge, but actually also you get access to it. They get the time to help you out with those issues. That's tremendous. What would you say as if you are an organization that maybe doesn't have an innovation lab today? What would be the advice to them? What would you tell them how to go about it?
Sofia, do you want to start so I can think?
Easy question, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I can start to elaborate, because I think we ask ourselves that question pretty often, though, even we have an innovation lab set up. But what we ask ourselves is really the purpose. What are we trying to achieve? Is it the two of us that should do it? Is it someone else? How should it be structured? Should it be a central unit? Should it be placed throughout our different divisions that we have in SEB? So I think really going back to the core question, what you would like to achieve. And if it's in the case similar to ours, that we are an enabler or working with strengthening the innovation capabilities throughout the bank, I would also recommend to start small with a core team, but identify who you should collaborate with, because that's a key for us to succeed. We have key stakeholders throughout the bank that are the specialists that we need to involve in different explorations, but also the ambassadors talking about this reinforcement of innovative culture that we need to create in SEB as well. I'm not sure if that's a very concrete answer, but at least that's really what came to mind.
I can build on that. And so I would say start with evaluating the culture you have within your company today. Ask yourself questions like, do I have a place where I can share my ideas, and are they taken seriously? And are they given a fair chance to become real? And if you do, and if there is such a place, you wouldn't probably need an innovation lab. But if you don't, I think an innovation lab could be a start to really help building that culture and allowing employees to do things that's not like part of why they get paid every single month, but I think it should be part of your like you're a web editor at the web bureau or something like that, and of course you do web editing things then, but I think part of that job should be to constantly challenge and question the processes that you do. And if those ideas get shut down or nobody listens, you need a place to help employees succeed with these.
And I guess, I mean, it all boils down to the culture, right? And at least from my experience, my vast experience, but I've seen a lot of organizations, and some of them, they are basically just not droning, they're really moving fast, but it's their existing business really, and so far from all have innovation processes in place. But even if you have processes as such, then you still need to work with the culture, and that's maybe even more important. So I think it's really interesting to hear you guys say that setting up an innovation lab is maybe the first step to transform or change that culture into a more innovative culture. And again, I really want to stress, and I think you guys agree with me, it's not to make people more innovative generally, because there is an innate creativity, I think, in most individuals, but just to enable them to be innovative. And as you said, Adam, that the ideas that people have, that they actually don't just get plain rejected or not listened to, but there is actually ways of picking those up and maybe making them real, and maybe having those people make it real even.
Yeah, so basically, if you should start the lab or the X business or whatever you want to call it, the design studio, innovation studio, with the purpose to enhance the innovation culture within your company, and the side effects is going to be great products and services that comes out from that journey.
That's a nice side effect.
Yeah.
But I think the culture is so essential, that you both mentioned, and I don't know the exact numbers, but recent research just shows that the digitalization journey, I think, is almost like 70% of all the initiatives fail and the main reason is the culture. And this is part of the innovation paradox, maybe sometimes, that we as human beings, we don't want to fail. That's part of our biological nature to not fail. And then trying to explore things where you're a bit unsure of how the results will look like, that's pretty tough. And also admitting that to someone else, maybe to your sponsor, or even so if you have this big project that everyone is just looking at, you have a great budget, you have just getting more sponsors on the way, and still you're not really sure if this is the right thing, and you want to pivot. And that's really hard to stretch your hand and say, I don't believe in this anymore. I think we will fail, or I have failed. And that's really hard. But we need to build a culture where we can help each other come to that stage, and remind ourselves almost daily that this is okay. We share this failure, but at least we learned something, and that's the key. We should take that learning and apply it in the next project or the next thing that we do.
But that sounds, like the ideal state. Would you say that you are working like that today?
I think that we are trying to, but of course, we also need to improve our culture. Also, we are a business, we're working with people's money. We are working with a lot of risk, and failure has not been really acceptable in our industry, if you look historically. So that's definitely a journey that we're on right now. And as I said, we need to remind ourselves, I mean, me and Adam need to remind each other sometimes that, okay, but we don't know the outcome of this. But we need to try at least, because if we haven't tried, then we don't know if it will work or not. So it comes down to very basic behavior and our nature as human beings.
And I think you're touching upon something really, really important there, and maybe it's even pretty obvious, but failure, I mean, we are both, as a species even, but this is more accentuated even in organizations, super risk averse, of course. And also allergic to failure, and failure is being frowned upon. But I think within this space, and I mean the innovation space per se, we need to reframe failure into learning and trying. And if we always talk about learning and trying and have KPIs for them, then there will be no failures. If you know what I mean. I mean, a failure will become a learning and a try. So that's what I mean. Yeah.
So that I think that could be the end goal for an innovation lab, when you don't have failures and only learnings, and you truly believe that. So you don't just put a stamp on it to say, okay, we learned, but then you feel like it's failing. I know that there's so many companies. Google is one that walks in the forefront, but really to change the feeling of failure. I mean, canceling a project that could lead to a raise or extra week of vacation, because it's hard to kill your darling or kill your baby. So instead of wasting money, moving on with a project is so the chances are so tiny for it to succeed. It's better to kill it early, and then you do a good thing, because you're not going to waste corporate money or corporate time.
And I think, just as you said here, I heard that Google, they had like a shutting down bonus or something like that, actually already in place, because they had realized that sometimes you have, and maybe it's even, you know, a high profile project, you're a very successful person leading that project, and deep inside, you know, this won't fly. So by introducing that, actually giving you money to shut down the project, that has helped a lot, and it's saved Google a lot of money and saved people a lot of face as well. So that's a really good mechanism, probably to have in place, and a great mindset to have.
And of course, I think shutting down a project is not that easy. I've done it myself, or exit a partnership, and it's filled with emotions, because being humble about that people have invested so much time and energy into trying to succeed with this, and then coming and saying this won't work. We took the wrong direction. We need to go all the way back and start off with a blank sheet. And those people that have been investing that time or resources probably don't feel that good about it.
Of course. I mean,
so it's really about
cost.
managing exactly, the people and their emotions in all of this too. And just to add to this discussion, I when I entered into the bank, I was given a challenge, so to say, in a project.
A what? A challenge?
A big challenge. It was it was more or less a crisis that I needed to solve, but it made one person, a senior manager, made it very clear to me that, okay, now you got this, you got the mandate, you should do what you think you should do, just be yourself, and you are allowed to fail, but you're not allowed not to learn from why you failed.
Oh, that's beautiful. So
it's really just pointing that out very straight to me. Also being pretty junior in that role, you're allowed to fail, but you need to learn from what you did and why. And you also need to learn from all the people that are surrounded by this project in some way. So that's a great takeaway from me.
Yeah, you need to learn. You're not allowed to not learn. That's epic. Can you add something to that, Adam? Or Sofia, you were saying something more? No,
just once again, being reminded of that sometime. Because we just tend to forget it, and then we are stressed and we act just out of, I just lost a word, but biological nature. Basically.
Yeah, but I mean, projects don't have emotions. People have emotions. So a project wouldn't feel bad about failing, but of course, human beings are the ones that is behind the project, and that's the sensitive part, and that you need to work with. So yeah, reminding everyone all the time that as long as you learn, we're doing good. But it mostly comes down to what you measure is what you get, right? And if you only measure success in terms of revenue or new clients, or I don't know, it could be any very measurable KPI, then it's hard to cancel, because you're not going to reach those numbers. So
that's right.
Different measurements during different phases in innovation case or project case, call it whatever you want, because then you will at least allow yourself to get the chance to succeed in each of every stage. So it's about milestones that we talked about earlier, learning milestones.
Yeah, that's also great takeaways. Okay, so now all the people that has been listening in or watching this interview, now you have sort of like the blueprint how to set up an innovation lab. But I would like to conclude with one last question, and that is kind of the challenges. I mean, you are a central part of the overall organization, but still it's a huge organization, right? And so how do you reach out, and maybe if of course not every employee is involved all the time, but still, what are the challenges there besides innovation culture as such? I mean, how do you work with outreach within your own organization?
We have actually an established concept within HR that we call gigging, or doing a gig, which basically is that not only Innovation Lab, but anyone within the bank can put up basically a job ad on the internet, saying that I need help with this kind of project for this amount of time. And there's basically no admin behind this gig ad. It's basically you just publish it. There's no need to change any organizational change or administration when it comes to HR. It's basically agreeing with the person that wants to gig at Innovation Lab to have a dialogue with their manager, and we have a dialogue with their manager as well, to say, okay, we need you full time for 3 months. The ultimate goal is that you will help us to reach whatever we want to do with the gig, but you will still learn and you will develop. Talking again about reskilling and upskilling. You will not get a raise, or you will not get a new position from this, but you will definitely learn something and take something back to your team and share that knowledge with them. So this is an established concept that we have been using, or even developing together with HR. So that helps us succeed, and that helps us reach out to our employees.
That's cool. Yeah, you have your own gig economy market going on in there. But
exactly.
But is it and it's not just you posting gigs? I mean, can everyone at SEB Banking post gigs, or what?
Yeah, they can. It's we made the process super simple. So it's basically just a form that you fill in. I need one person with statistical skills or mathematical skills for this kind of project, half time for 2 weeks. Then you post it, people apply like normal, like they do for a normal position. However, the process is so much shorter since you don't need any administration or signing agreements. It's just, okay, let's do it.
That's a great, I never heard about that, that someone else is doing that. It sounds so obvious now when you're telling us. I think it must be a great way to actually avoid that kind of sub-optimization that always arises in organizations, where you just cannot, move between departments, organizational structures, because you need new codes to put your time on, and you got to make sure that the budgets are resolved and all that and approved. This is such a great way to actually lowering the hurdle, and especially if you're working with employees, they still got to have their salary paid at the end of the month. So from a company perspective, it doesn't really affect the financials, at least not short term. So yeah, that's very, very interesting. I think with that, you have shared a lot of important knowledge here about how to set up an innovation lab and how you guys are working with it. Is there something you would like to add to this conversation?
Now, from my part, I just say that we're super proud of the work that we have done, and we really love the work that we're doing, and really emphasizing how great it is for us to meet new companies that allows us to look into new industries, new market, new business models that we haven't come in contact with never before. So we still learn a lot by doing this. And the magic is when Sofia is always talking about cross-pollination with
I
ideas.
think she said it at least 2 or 3 times today. No.
Yeah, and I think it's super valuable lesson, because that's what it's all about. Cross-pollinate ideas from different companies, from the bank, from different colleagues, between me and Sofia, between us two and you, Peter. That's how innovation happens.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure our viewers here also really enjoyed it. Hope to meet you soon again, guys. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.